Hello and welcome to Nervous System Day 2. Let's go ahead and get started. Today we're looking at Nervous System Day 2. And our aim is, how does the nervous system maintain homeostasis? So, hold on. Well, I'm not 100% sure if you can see me on video, but you can hear me, ladies and gentlemen. So, how does the nervous system maintain homeostasis? Well, the nervous system, as we hopefully remember, is the control center for the body. So, in simple terms, the nervous system maintains homeostasis by controlling every other body system, even at an unconscious level, right? Things like our autonomic nervous system, right, that you might learn about in more specific detail a little bit in this class, but later if you take anatomy or AP bio, right? These are unconscious muscles, things like our heartbeat and our breathing rate, the rate of filtration of our kidneys. All of these things are controlled by the nervous system, but they aren't all voluntary, they aren't all conscious. And the nervous system is divided into two parts: the central nervous system, which is down the center of the body, and then the peripheral nervous system, which you can see is sort of on the outsides, right? The periphery, like your peripheral vision, is how you see out the sides of your eyes. That's your peripheral nervous system. And that's all the nerves extending from your central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord. Pretty important, and you can see there my little brain and spinal cord that I drew. And the central and peripheral nervous system are critical for the maintenance of homeostasis, and that's that stable internal environment balance. And we need our nervous system to maintain that balance. All right. So, a little refresher from yesterday. In humans, one function of an interneuron, a between neuron, is to relay impulses directly from a sensory neuron to a motor neuron, right? Between the sensory and motor neurons is where the interneuron functions. And which structures in a human transmit electrochemical messages? Remember, it's quick chemical communication. And they are electrochemical, right? They are charged messages, and those are our neurons. And we're talking about the nervous system, which is the system of neurons in the body. All right, so let's break it down. Part A, nervous system regulation. Suppose you are crossing a street and you hear a car horn. What do you do? Well, inside of your body, when you hear the car horn, step one, nerve cells in the ear detect a stimulus, right? And a stimulus could be a smell, a sound, a sight, something that is detected by one of your sense organs, right? In this case, the sound of the car alarm. So that is step one. What happens first? Then step two, the sensory neurons carry the sound message to the brain. So the first part of the nervous system to be enacted is in that sense organ that is carrying the message to the brain. And you can see there that impulse is traveling down the axon to be carried to the next the next neuron, right? And that impulse is traveling down. And when it connects to the brain then interprets that message, right? Our brain is consciously interpreting messages or unconsciously interpreting messages, depending upon what brain part of the brain the message is being sent to. But in this case, this would be conscious, right? We would be thinking, what do we do based on this loud car horn or loud car alarm, right? And the response now, our response is sent to the motor neuron, which is going to engage some kind of movement, right? That's what motor means. So let's get going. Those motor neurons are going to carry the message from the brain to the spinal cord to the body. Now we're actually about to move. And then this next step here is the movement itself. The muscles of the neck and shoulders respond by turning the head, right? And this is the response to the stimulus. And although this is 5 steps, right? This happens instantaneously, right? This happens so fast. And that's why yesterday when we were talking about the difference between the nervous system and the endocrine system, we differentiate and we say the nervous system is this really fast communication because this entire process takes, I don't know, 2 seconds. And all of that communication is going on in that time. So, how exactly is that communication happening between neurons? And you can see here, these are the dendrites coming off of one neuron, communicating with the axon. So, those are the two opposite ends of the neuron, and they touch each other in a web that we looked at a little bit yesterday. And this space between is called the synapse. And that just means the space. But that space between is very important because as you can see, there are these little dots here, and those dots are neurotransmitters. And there are also these little holes that are specially equipped to hold those neurotransmitters, and those are called vesicles. But neurotransmitters are how our nervous system communicates, right? This is the way that the electrochemical messages or impulses are transmitted between neurons into the synapse by these electrochemical messengers. So when an impulse travels along a neuron, it usually doesn't touch the next neuron. Instead, there is a space between neurons called the synapse. Impulses must jump across this space. Chemicals released by the axon carry impulses across the synapse. That's the neurotransmitter. Then the impulse continues to travel to the next neuron. These chemicals, shown in the picture, are neurotransmitters, which are the chemical messengers that carry nervous system impulses. Part C is something that we talked about a little bit yesterday, the reflex. We looked at the reflex arc yesterday. So let's look at this again. Step 1, a strong pain stimulus, right? In this case, it's touching a cactus. So you see stimulus can be anything that causes a response in your sensory organ, causes your sensory neuron to generate a nerve impulse, in this case in your skin, right? Touch, ouch. Then the nerve impulse is carried to a sensory by a sensory neuron to the spinal cord. And you can see here it's going just to the spinal cord, not to the brain in this case, because it is a reflex. Okay. So it's a reflex that happens instantaneously. Ouch. You don't have to think about it. In the spinal cord, the nerve impulse causes a signal to be sent directly to a motor neuron, bypassing the brain. So it's still going into the central nervous system, right? It's still going into the spinal cord, but it's not going into the brain, right? So then the motor neuron stimulates the effector, which is the muscle, causing a contraction, and that contraction is what you typically refer to as a reflex. So when you're in the doctor's office, they might like smack your knee with a hammer and they're testing your reflex. And the reason that that's really important is because they're testing the health of your nervous system, right? If your knee doesn't respond in the way that they expect it to, that means there could be something wrong with your nervous system and the nerves in your legs. So, a reflex is an involuntary or automatic action that your body does in response to something. And that something is a stimulus, right? It's a new vocabulary word, stimulus. And without you even having to think about it, that's the key here to the question below. You don't decide to move your hand when you have touched a prickly plant, you just move it. There are many types of reflexes, and every healthy person has them. In fact, we are born with them, right? And that's what the doctor is checking for. So, what is the major missing component in a reflex as opposed to a voluntary action, right? And we said it here when we went through the example. Reflex does not require the brain. We don't think about it, we just do it. So a reflex action bypasses conscious control. Like up here, we went to in step 3, the brain is interpreting the message. For some things, particularly pain messages, the brain doesn't need to interpret anything. Our body knows what to do, which is why sometimes you might have a reflex action that sort of doesn't make sense. You duck when you're driving underneath something low, for example, right? Consciously, your brain knows that you're in a car, you're not going to hit your head, but it's a reflex. Your body just is like, oh, danger. And that, in that case, that stimulus is through sight, but it is still something that is an automatic reaction, just like moving your hand away from something hot if you touch it, or in this case, from a cactus. And that's very important to making sure that you survive. And so pain is really critical here to a reflex action. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. So today we talked about how the nervous system maintains homeostasis in the body. And remember that the nervous system is the control center for everything our body does. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Don't forget to go ahead and complete your exit ticket. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you all tomorrow on Zoom. Bye, guys.